think everybody's coming on. I know Karen Marshall has got some great stuff to share with us this morning on some research that she's done. So I haven't seen our legislators yet, but I'm sure they'll be on shortly. And there we go.
There's one.
There's Senator Hughes. Okay. And hopefully JC will come on, get on, and Stephanie. Okay, it's 7:02, so we're going to get started on our 7 a.m. Friday morning call. I want to thank everybody for joining us and being the warriors that are informed on everything that's going on as far as election integrity and redistricting. I want to thank the team, as usual, Erica Watley, who gets out all of our email information, Karen Marshall, Shirley Martinez, Pat Hastings, and then our advisor, Mrs. Tony Ann DeShiel. And she said to tell everybody hello. And she looked forward to being back with us at some point. And we really appreciate all of the session briefings from our legislators. We're getting near the end of the session, and we want to thank Chairman Stephanie Click, Representative J.C. Jatan, and the all-knowledgeable Senator Brian Hughes, who always gives us a lot of good insight. Really appreciate that. It's TFRW Biennial Convention, so as y'all can tell, I am I'm not at my usual residence. We're having our TFRW convention, change of leadership, so we're really, really excited about it. And as y'all have seen, the legislature has really been on a roll this week, working really, really hard, listening to the Texas citizens, getting the maps passed through committees and on the floors and passed through the floors. And, you know, we always do little research in the background, and it's interesting whenever you go in and you search Texas redistricting, what pops up. And the team wanted to point out something to all of our listeners this morning. We've got an organization that always pops up, the Texas Tribune, and it seems like even though they're a nonprofit and they're supposed to be nonpartisan, most of the time the redistricting information has a definite left slant to it. So Karen Marshall did some research, and she's going to take a couple of minutes just to share, you know, why we are thinking that everybody needs to be aware what the Texas Tribune's doing and putting out there, since they are supposed to be nonpartisan. So Karen Marshall, you want to give us an update on what you found about redistricting in the media with the Texas Tribune? Can't hear you, Karen. You're muted. Well, I see your video. Karen, can you unmute? See if I can unmute you. Well.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yay. Yeah.
Who knew that when you start screen sharing, your mute button disappears? Okay, does anybody see what I put up, or did that disappear already?
No, it's up.
It's there.
Okay, cool.
You'll have to give sort of a description to the callers that called in.
Certainly. So Bisa mentioned to me that the Texas Tribune is a nonpartisan nonprofit, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I started to look and see what they post and their reporting on redistricting. And within 5 minutes, I was aghast. I mean, it was just awful. It was ridiculous. And I just don't know how Senator Hughes and Chairman Click and all of them can look themselves in the mirror from what I found out about what they're just doing at that capital of ours. How can they not hang their heads in shame? And I just posted a few of the examples. I gave up after the first 20 articles. These are literally the first 20 articles about redistricting that I found that the Texas Tribune had posted were so partisan, were so biased. It was ridiculous. I was just amazed because it just, as you can see, all the orange on the screen is is my own emphasis, just because I was so impressed at the contrast in what I found of what they say they are and then how they've been reporting redistricting. So from the beginning to the end, they've been very, very partial. They have been very effective at promoting the Democrats' talking points. I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrats are gleeful at all of the headlines, because even if after a couple of paragraphs you find some non-biased reporting in any of these articles and some actual facts, if most people even just look at the take away the tagline and the title of any of their articles, they get the message that of exactly what they're trying to convey, and it's not nonpartisan. Some of the only somewhat semi kind of by comparison unbiased or less biased, I should say, articles I found in there were by Patrick Zvitek when he was talking about candidates and campaigns that are going on because of or through redistricting. The rest were blatantly biased. And it was really disappointing.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point, Karen. And you know, some of the headlines that you guys might not be able to read: Texas reduced Black and Hispanic majority congressional districts in proposed map despite people of color fueling population growth. But if you read through there, you know, Todd Henner talks about that, in fact, that they haven't done that, that they have, you know, about the appropriate apportionment of that. And the reason that we wanted to bring this up is we wanted to highlight, you know, they are a nonprofit 501c3, and there are members that are involved with that. So as y'all are all really well connected, some of the advertisers on their website is University of Texas Press, Texas Association of School Business Offices, Texas Association of Community Colleges, Texas Bankers Association, BSNF Railway, and Educate Texas, also the UT Health School of Public Health. So it feels like that, you know, they're using some of our organizations and everything that are supported by Texas to advocate against really what is good governance for Texas. So we're just pointing this out. If y'all have any contacts with advertisers, and if you wanted to file some comments on Texas Tribune refuting some of their allegations, you know, that would probably be a really good idea. All right, we're going to move on. We've done our public service message. So we're going to move on. And I think we saw Representative Jatan, I believe you're with us. You want to give us an update with what's going on in the House?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I had to jot down a bunch of notes as to what happened this week. It's been a busy week in the Capitol. We started off, I guess, on Sunday, working on amendments in preparation for this week. On Monday, we had the hearing that started at 9 a.m. for the SBOE and Senate maps. That lasted most of the day. Tuesday was the big day. Tuesday is when we finally got our House maps done. That started at 10 a.m. on Tuesday and ended at 4 a.m. on Wednesday. Went through the entire state of Texas and went through all the amendments and finally got that done. I think the most notable from that is the down in the Valley, Jam Lozano got an amendment passed through that picked up another Republican seat for us down there. Makes it more competitive. And then over in Bexar County, I got an amendment done to strengthen up Lujan's district to make sure that one's we have a fighting chance of keeping that one Republican. And we had another attempt over in Travis County, but that ended up not making its way through. Unfortunately, I couldn't get one of the GOP representatives on board for that one. And but we picked up some more seats, and we got I think we have around 85, 86, pretty strong Republican ones. And I think with things trending our way, we're hopeful to get to that 90 or 100 in 2022. And so made for a long day. The next morning at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, we went back and did redistricting hearings and heard the congressional maps. That again took most of the day. We did not accept any committee amendments in the congressional, the hearing for the congressional maps. Those moved on to, we're going to hear those on Saturday. That was when we'll have the congressional maps up, and there will be 4 amendments, and that will likely result in non-concurrence from the Senate, and we'll go to conference committee and hopefully have those congressional maps done before Tuesday. The fear of it going beyond Tuesday is that if we don't have maps done by that certain deadline that we voted on, then we end up pushing back the primaries and so forth, and we don't want to do that. We'll keep trying to keep these things on track. Getting to yesterday. Yesterday was a really big day on the floor. We did the HB 25 protecting girls sports. That was a marathon deal as well, but that finally passed last night on second and third reading. We came back for third reading and made sure that one is done. It's headed over to the Senate. Today we will hear the appropriations bills and pass the SBOE and Senate maps. There will likely not be any amendments for the Senate maps. There will likely be some amendments for the SBOE, but I think it'll be pretty minor if there are any. And I guess that's it. I think the main points is we got 3 more maps to go. I think the more debated one is going to be the one tomorrow for the congressional maps. And there's still time for input. If you have thoughts, suggestions, concerns, send it over to the redistricting committee or your state reps, and we'll get those worked on. And like I said, we will be accepting some floor amendments tomorrow, and we'll see how that looks. And once it goes to conference committee, there's no guarantees on what ends up in that final deal, but we should get that on the floor hopefully by Tuesday and be able to sign and die.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we've seen that y'all been really rolling this week. It's like it's been 24/7.
Crammed a month into 1 week, feels like.
Yeah, and all of the I watched some of the hearings. It's like, wow, you just have to be so patient. I don't know if I could be that patient.
Yes, sometimes you just have to leave the room. You're just better off.
Well, thank you so much for your update. And I hope you'll be able to stay with us for a little bit for some questions a little later on.
Absolutely.
Senator Hughes, would you give us an update on everything that went on in the Senate?
Well, good morning. Thank you so much. And it is encouraging to see things coming together. Y'all know how it is with a part-time citizen legislature, the way the U.S. Congress used to be, the way every state legislature used to be, and Texas still maintains that, and it makes a difference. It means that we don't pass as many bills, and that's good. It's hard to pass a bill in Texas, and it's frustrating to us when stuff that we want, and when I say we, I don't mean we, the members of the Senate, I mean we conservatives, grassroots people, everyday Texans, when we can't see bills passed that we believe strongly in, that we want to see done. It's so frustrating sometimes, but I want to reassure everybody, and I think folks on this call are pretty sophisticated. You know this. A lot of times good bills don't make it through, but for every good bill that doesn't make it through, man, there's a whole lot of bad bills that don't make it through either. And so that's what I have to remind myself when I get disappointed because we can't get done everything we want to. Now, having said that, we're getting a lot of great stuff done. As Representative Jatan just recounted over in the House this week, been the same way in the Senate. I was over visiting with friends in the House last night, right as they passed that protection of girls' sports and in public schools. Important bill. We're glad to see that, and I look forward to the Senate passing that bill. And we are coming to the end of that appropriations process that Representative Jatan mentioned. As you know, as we're all aware, the feds are just spending all kinds of money. I don't know whatever happened to billions, because now it's trillions. And that's something we're all going to have to deal with. But you know what happens. They send us money. They send money to the states. And so when the feds give us money, it's somewhat of a misnomer, because it's money that they took from the people of Texas. They took from you, and they give it back to us, some of it with strings attached. So we've got to carefully evaluate those strings, if there are strings, and make sure it's worth it. So that's the process we've been going through with this, COVID money that the feds have sent back. And also, of course, the normal budget process that we go through. So it's good. We have a very conservative budgeting process in Texas, and that's how it should be. We're pretty tight with your money, and that's what you want us to do. So anyway, that's going on. And the chair had asked me to kind of talk about where we are in the process overall with those 4 maps. That is the Texas House, the Texas Senate, the State Board of Education, and the U.S. congressional maps. And so just briefly, Representative Jutan already gave us an excellent rundown of where the House is. And by way of history, to think of where we are, things are coming together here at the end of the special session. So that map that he was just telling us about, the proposed lines for the Texas House, again, they passed that October the 13th, and it's over in the Senate. And I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I'll remind everyone that these redistricting maps are just like any other bill, just like any other piece of legislation. A bill's got to pass both houses and be signed by the governor. And if a bill passes one house, let's say the House introduces a bill, it comes over to the Senate, and the Senate makes changes to it, then it goes back to the House for them to take a look at it. And if they like the changes, they vote to concur with Senate amendments, and that bill goes to the governor. If they don't like the changes, normally we'll go to a conference committee, and that's made up of a few members of the House and a few members of the Senate. And that conference committee will work out the differences between the 2 versions of the bill, and then they'll send a compromise version back for the House and the Senate to vote on, yes or no. And if that passes, then it goes to the governor for signature. Of course, requires the governor's signature. So those same rules apply to these redistricting maps. Sometimes we forget that. So where are we? House Bill 1 is that House proposed map for the Texas House, and Chairman Hunter is the author of that bill. Again, as Representative Jutan told us, they passed it October 13th. It's over in the Senate now, and Chairman Huffman, who's our redistricting chairman, is the sponsor of that bill, as the House and Senate work together. And that bill is set for a hearing this morning at 9 o'clock. So shortly, I'll be over in the Senate Special Redistricting Committee, and we'll be looking at that Texas House map. And you've already, Representative Jutan's explained this to us well. If you look at where we are right now, the current map, where we have 83 Republicans and 67 Democrats, if you look at President Trump's numbers, we have 83 Republicans, and President Trump won 76 of the districts in the current map, the map we're under today, not the one they just passed. So that's encouraging. Our Republicans are overperforming in the House. And so the current map has 76 districts that President Trump won. This new one has 85. And so as Representative Jutan says, even on the floor in committee, they made changes to make this map more fair, more conservative, to reflect, where Texans are, reflect how Texans are voting. So it's encouraging. And by way of perspective as to how much Texas has grown, in the maps we're under today, that we're still under until these new maps pass, when those were drawn based on the 2010 census, every member of the House had 167,000 constituents on average. Under this new map, 194,000. So to give you some perspective, your Texas House members represent about 4 times the average number of constituents compared to state reps from other states. It's remarkable. In fact, the only state where a House member represents more people, a state House member represents more people than a Texas House member, and that's California. And that's just based on they have a lot fewer seats than we do. So by far, your Texas House members represent more constituents than any other state reps in the country except for California. And so we're encouraged about that. We're going to take up that map, a good conservative map, in the Texas Senate today in the committee. Now, what about those Texas Senate maps? Well, Senator Huffman file Senate Bill 4 with the maps for the Texas Senate. And we passed those out of the Senate on October 4th. The House committee passed those on October the 11th. And that bill is set on the House calendar for today. Now, of course, the House can adjust that a little bit. It may get pushed back to tomorrow, but it's on the calendar for today. And so the current map, as you know, out of 31 senators, we have 18 Republicans, 13 Democrats. The map, Senate Bill 4, that we have passed, should give us 19 Republicans, 12 Democrats. And again, for a little bit more perspective, under the 2010 map that we're under today, that we're still living under, a senator represents about 811,000 people. Under this map, we'll have 940,000 people. And it's interesting. I was comparing this to other states. Under this map, a member of the Texas Senate will represent more constituents than any state senator in the country. Yes, even California. We passed up California with this map. So that just shows you that Texas is growing. People are moving to Texas. They're voting with their feet. They're leaving those high tax, high regulation states. And so that's encouraging. And again, that's House is going to be taking up that map. And just for a little historical perspective, I may have mentioned this before. When it comes to those House and Senate maps, the two houses respect one another. So the Texas House will come up with a map that they believe is best for their lines. And then the Texas Senate comes up with a map that the Senate believes is best for its lines. And we have input from our constituents in the House and the Senate. And then, so the House passes a map and they send it to us, and the Senate passes a map and we send it to them. And it's customary for us to pass those two maps at exactly the same time with no amendments. Again, the Senate doesn't mess with the House map and the House doesn't mess with the Senate map. And it's kind of fun. If we get to do it, the tradition is that they'll open up the doors to the House chamber, open up the doors to the Senate chamber, so that if you look all the way across the Capitol, the lieutenant governor who's presiding over the Senate and the speaker who's presiding over the House, they can just barely see each other way across there. And the parliamentarians who help direct traffic, they get on the phone. And so they synchronize the passage of those two maps. And so exactly the time the Senate is voting to pass the House map, the House is voting to pass the Senate map. And they try to even synchronize the raising and lowering of the gavel. Just a little piece of trivia, and doesn't mean that much, but we should see that happen in the next day or two here, again, toward the end of the special session, right on time. So what about the State Board of Education? Representative Jutan mentioned that 15 members of the State Board of Education. I was just bragging about how big our Texas Senate districts are at 900,000 people. Well, those members of the State Board of Education will represent almost 2 million people each. 15 districts to represent the whole state of Texas. So that proposed map for the new lines passed the Texas Senate. That's Senate Bill 7, passed the Senate on October 4th, and the House committee voted that on October the 11th, and it's also on the House calendar for today. That means they could do it today, tomorrow. It's going to happen quickly. And right now there are 9 Republicans and 6 Democrats, 9 Republicans and 6 Democrats on that State Board of Education. And it's interesting, under the current map, we have 9 Republicans, but only 7 of those districts went, 7 of those districts went for President Biden. And so 6 of those districts are represented by Democrats. So one of those districts that voted for President Biden is held by a Republican today. So under the new map, there will be 10 districts that went for President Trump and 5 that went for President Biden. So we'll see how that translates. But it should be a good map, a strong map. And the House is working on that. They're tweaking it and trying to make it as strong as it can be. Y'all know, people on this call know how important, my goodness, that State Board of Education is. And so it's a thankless job. Representative Jutan and Chairman Click and I we each make the princely sum of $600 a month as your members of the legislature. And we knew that when we ran. We're not complaining. Those members of the State Board of Education make zero for what they do. So we're especially thankful for them. And so, again, that map passed by the Senate and about to be taken up and passed by the House. And then finally, that U.S. congressional map. I know we've all talked a lot about this map. Senate Bill 6, that started in the Texas Senate. We passed that map on October the 6th. The House committee passed it October the 13th, as Representative Jatan told us. And it's going to be teed up probably here in the next couple of days. And so you'll recall there's a lot of discussion about that map. Obviously, it affects a lot of things. When we draw these maps for the Texas House and the Texas Senate, State Board of Education, there's a constitutional principle of one man, one vote. One person, one vote is how we say it now. And that means each of the districts needs to be about the same size. Everybody understands that. And we have a 10% standard deviation. That is to say, for example, the average size of a Texas Senate seat will be that 940,178 people. But then the smallest district can be 5% below that. The biggest can be 5% above that. We have a little bit of room to wiggle. On these U.S. congressional maps, they have to be balanced perfectly. And so every one of these U.S. congressional maps, districts on this new map will have 766,987 people. And that's up from 698,000 in the last map that was drawn in 2010. So right now we have 23 Republicans and 13 Democrats in our U.S. congressional delegation, right? We have 36 members of the U.S. House. But you'll recall in the redistricting process, we have those 435 members of Congress, the U.S. House, and we don't add members of the U.S. House. We just move them around. So every census, some states will gain members of Congress, some states will lose members of Congress, and every 10 years, every census, that happens. And so this tells us a lot about where the population is going. It's interesting. If you look at that process has been in place since the 1920s. Until the 1920s, as America grew, they would just add new seats to the U.S. House. So no state would lose seats. They would just add new seats as population grew. But I believe along about the 20s, they decided to lock the number in at 435, and now those seats just get moved around. And so how does that process work? If you look at that, every census since the 20s, in that process, California has gained seats because their population has grown. Every decennial census, every 10-year census, Congress has picked up U.S. House seats that other states have lost because their population was shrinking. It's interesting, the 2010 census and that redistricting, the 2010 census is the first time that California did not gain seats. They broke even. And then this census, 2020, this is the first time California has lost. They've lost U.S. congressional seats. What about those states that gained? Well, it won't surprise you that Texas is growing fast. And so there's only one state that's picking up 2 U.S. congressional seats, and that's Texas. We're getting 2 new seats. Florida's getting 1. You can look and see where the population's moving. They're moving where the taxes are lower and the liberty is higher and the opportunities are greater. And so we're encouraged about that. And so what about those 2 new seats? We had a big discussion about where those should go. The thought that those should be Republican, maybe one in Dallas, one in Houston, what we should do. And so as we discussed before, when we looked at this U.S. congressional map, we realized that of the 23 Republican seats that we currently hold, there's a handful that we barely held on to in 2020. Some we just won by the skin of our teeth, just because the districts had changed. And, when the map's put in place and then it's got to last for 10 years, districts change, population changes, people move around. And so our first goal on this congressional map is to firm up those existing Republican seats. And I'm pleased to report to you that this map, Senate Bill 6, the proposed House map, does strengthen our existing Republicans. So they have good districts that are fairly drawn where they can, where a conservative or Republican should win election. And then those 2 additional seats, one more of those is a Republican seat. One of those is a Democratic seat. we recognize that in Texas population growth, it's not been all Republicans. So we have to look at population and where the people are. So the good news is, while the current map has us 23 Republicans, 13 Democrats, the new map should give us 24 Republicans, 14 Democrats. And those 24 Republican seats are strong. They're solid. We should be able to hang on to those. And one more thing we don't want to forget about this U.S. congressional map. As you know, the voters, there are exciting things happening in the Rio Grande Valley when it comes to voting. Our friends in the Rio Grande Valley, our friends of Hispanic origin, who we know generally are conservative, pro-life, pro-family, hardworking, entrepreneurial, pro-military. These voters, obviously, that we're talking about Texans who are of Hispanic origin. They're Texans. They're conservative. They are culturally conservative, fiscally conservative. They're with us. Now, they have a tradition of voting Democratic, just like all of Texas did. Nobody on this call is old enough to remember, but it's not that long ago. Texas was a solid Democratic state. Over in the hills of East Texas, from whence I come, people were voting Democrat really well, majority voting Democrat well into the 1990s and the early 2000s. So, we figured out, as President Reagan famously said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. And so my point is that in the Rio Grande Valley, there's a lot of encouragement as people there continue to vote more conservative, to identify more with the Republican Party. And so some of these districts in the Rio Grande Valley are drawn that are close districts, some that President Trump won or came close to winning. I believe we're going to see those districts continue to trend Republican. Some already elect conservative Democrats. And so there's a lot of encouragement there. And so I was asked for an update on where the maps are and also what we're looking like going into 2022.
Senator Hughes, before you leave that, could you speak a little bit about the U.S. representatives that testified at y'all's committee hearing? I believe it was Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Congressman Al Green.
Yes, be glad to. So, these maps are drawn by the Texas legislature, but they're the maps that the U.S. House members have to run under. So they can come and, when the U.S. House members are Texans, they can come testify on any bill they want to. But we do normally hear from them on the U.S. congressional map. And so U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee is a long tenured member of the Texas House from the Houston area, a Democrat. And U.S. Representative Al Green is also a long-serving member of the U.S. House from the Houston area, a Democrat. And, of course, this redistricting is all about population growth and population shifts. And some areas don't grow as fast as others. Some areas shrink in population. Population moves around. And so under this proposed map, U.S. Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee and U.S. Congressman Al Green are paired. Their districts are in the same part of Houston. They're close together. And under the current map, they each represent different districts. But under this new map, they will both live in the same district. So they are paired. And that happens all the time in redistricting for members of the U.S. House, for the Texas House, for the Texas Senate, for the State Board of Education. Again, population shifts and lines have to be drawn fairly. And sometimes incumbents get put in the same district. It's called pairing. And so usually one of them will move to a different district, or maybe one will retire. I just mean generally, not just these two. Normally when two legislators are paired, one will run in a different district or one will retire, or they'll run against each other and duke it out. And so Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, and Representative Al Green, U.S. Representative Al Green, both testified because they don't want to be put in the same district. I don't blame them. I mean, they've got jobs to preserve, and so they're their own seats. So they came and testified. Also, of course, we got input from members of Congress in general on this map. I think they got together and came up. The congressional delegation got together with a proposed map, sent something to us. We made some changes, but many of us have talked to our individual members of Congress, and they've asked for a little tweak here and there. hey, this county is a better fit in my district, or the way that county was split, you see this community is divided. Here's the big employer where most of the people work, and you've got it divided up where the people live. And so changes like that are made. But yes, we did have those two members of the U.S. House come and testify before the Texas legislature. So that was good.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because, looking at the map, it looks like y'all, split those districts up in communities of common interest. And so
yes.
Even though, it was done to benefit the citizens, the Democrats were very, very eager to get on board and say that they wanted their district to be just the way it was the last time instead of looking at community of interest. But I thought the Senate did a really good job at putting that community of interest together.
Oh, Madam Chair, thank you. And you're right about that process. And, I know there's going to be some questions. Those U.S. congressional districts, since they have to be balanced perfectly to a person, it does get tough. Man, some of the lines have to be drawn, and obviously counties are split. Community neighborhoods are sometimes have to be split. So it's hard. And so you are correct. It's communities of interest that we try to protect. And sometimes that's not good for incumbents, but protecting incumbents is not the most important thing. It's a factor because people, have elected Congressman X. And so, we don't want to shake things up too much. So protection of incumbents is a factor, but it's not the most important factor. Those communities of interest, that's what matters. So again, the House is going to be taking up that map, and hopefully this will all get done before the 19th, Tuesday, the last day of this third extraordinary session. And yes, extraordinary session is one of the official names for them. Sometimes they're not extraordinary or special, but that's the one we're in now. And we talked about that conference committee process. The House passes a bill, Senate changes it. The House doesn't like our changes. We go to a conference committee. Representative Jatan alluded to that. On the Texas House and Senate maps, again, we don't anticipate any amendments. Those maps have been thoroughly vetted and amended in each House, but I expect the Senate will pass the House map and the House will pass the Senate map. The Board of Education, I believe the House is looking at making some changes, which of course they should do. They're entitled to do that. And so depending on what changes they make, I know we're working together on this. And so the Senate may agree with the changes they make. And if so, that, say, Board of Education map, after the House amends it, will come back to us. If we like the changes they made, we'll vote to concur and send that bill to the governor. If not, we'd have to go to a conference committee and to work out a compromise. We still have a couple of days for that. On that U.S. congressional map, and I think we expect the House to take that up maybe tomorrow. Again, our members of the House will know a better idea, but so they'll be taking it up maybe tomorrow. And so depending on what they do, they may need to make some changes to it, and we'll continue to work together. Hopefully they make changes the Senate can live with. If not, that map would have to go to a conference committee. So we're in good shape on the Texas House and Senate maps, I believe on the State Board of Education maps, and I'm optimistic we can complete those congressional maps before Tuesday, midnight, the end of this third special session. But so if we get those maps done, again, we should see strong Republican majorities next year, 2022 cycle, strong Republican majorities in the Texas House, the Texas Senate, the State Board of Education, and the U.S. congressional delegation from Texas. And y'all know how this works. That midterm election should be great for Republicans. The party that controls the White House almost always has a bad cycle in that first midterm. That's true whether we have the White House or they have the White House. Whoever has the White House tends to lose seats in the Congress, House and Senate, U.S. House and Senate in that first election cycle. And that trickles down to the state House and state Senate and state offices as well. And so that's always going to be true. And my goodness, with everything going on in Washington and what that's doing to our country, with the trillions of dollars they're trying to spend, are spending, and with the unspeakable crisis on our southern border, with violent crime. Listen, I hate to be so gloom and doom, but with violent crime on the rise in our cities and our suburbs, and food prices going up so rapidly, energy prices, inflation, oh my goodness, and the horrible experience in Afghanistan, with all these things. Now, we're still got a ways to go. We are a year away. We're a year away from those midterm elections, those fall elections. But we have every reason to believe that the voters of Texas and America are going to send a strong rebuke to President Biden and the Democratic Party for the evils that they're bringing on this country. So we're optimistic. We're optimistic.
That's a big amen from everybody out in the audience. I think Karen Marshall has some questions teed up for y'all. If y'all are ready. And so Karen, can you put them on the hot seat?
Be happy to. People are fired up and ready to ask their questions. The first question is from Paul Yamarick. He asks, regarding wearing campaign attire at polls, a recent court order states, moreover, sections 61.003 and 85.036 are struck down, electioneering, as unconstitutional infringements on the First Amendment right to free speech. The order was from September 30th, 2021. Can anyone please explain and clarify that?
I can speak to that generally, and I bet Representative Jatan or Chairman Click has more details about that. You guys get it. In America, we believe in free speech. It's important. It's fundamental. We also recognize that in the polling place and within that 100-foot marker, right, we do put limits on electioneering, right? We want to have voters able to cast their votes according to their conscience, not be intimidated or overtly influenced. And so we have limited, campaign signs and electioneering and within a certain distance of the polls and inside the polls. And again, it's a conflict because we believe in free speech. Of course, there are reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on even free speech. And so, yes, so that some of those rules were challenged. And I've just got to tell you, I'm just going to step back for a minute as a candidate. I've been frustrated when in some counties where the polling place limits where we're allowed to put up signs outside. They put the polling places in such a way and they cordon off certain areas so that we only have a small area where we can put up campaign signs outside that 100-foot marker. That's a rule that's been there's been some litigation about that. And then this one about wearing campaign attire. Yes, so that's a brand new ruling, and look for an appeal of that ruling. But yes, there could be some changes to that. I think we'll have a final ruling and we'll have that settled before we go to the polls again. But that's the issue. It's that balance between free speech and, respecting people's privacy and letting them make their own decisions when they get in the polling place.
If I might just expand upon Senator Hughes's comment,
this is Donna Davidson, who practices in this area. So,
thank you, Visa. So the Republican Party of Texas chairman, the county chairman across the county, across the state, received an email from the Secretary of State to provide a little bit of an interpretation. It was dated October 12th. I got it courtesy of one of our Republican county chairs. And it basically says that right now for this November election, because it hasn't been appealed, as Senator Hughes indicated, it is going to be appealed if it's not already in the process of being appealed. But here's how they're going to interpret it at this point in time as of October 12th, which was only 3 days ago. Apparently, there is still a provision that was not stricken, that is section 61.010, that talks about refraining from wearing this apparel. So if it is not on the ballot, if it is a MAGA hat, Make America Great Again, Trump is not on the ballot. If it is a Senator Hughes t-shirt and he's not on the ballot, you can probably.
And those are real pretty t-shirts too, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
So if it is that, he's not on the ballot on November 2nd. It's constitutional amendments. So if you wear or want to say, vote for religious freedom, vote prop, the proposition regarding churches not being closed. And I think that one is 3, maybe. So if you wore that, you can't wear that because that is on the ballot. But that's the way they're interpreting it right now. Karen Marshall asked me to look for it on the Secretary of State's website, and I haven't found it. So you just have to take my word for it that it was in a mass email. I can see if I can get my hands on something that we can then post on Tony Ann's website. But at this point, I just have an email.
Okay, that sounds good. Representative Jatan, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, I think they both summed it up really well.
Okay. Next question, Karen.
All right. The next question came from Andrew Eller, and it is, what is going to happen with both Representative Jatan and Representative Stevenson being in the same House district now?
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of confusion around that. Representative Stevenson wanted to make sure that his home and base of his district was within Wharton County, and so with the growth of Fort Bend County, it did push out from Del Webb, where he's at right now, but he's gonna move to Wharton County and run out of there. And so there's not an actual pairing out of Fort Bend County. Stevenson's got his district still, and still got 26 over there.
All right. Thomas McCaig asks, in Chairman Rinaldi's email sent yesterday, he indicated that the House map was much less favorable to Republicans. Can anyone address that?
I think Representative Jatan said that, or perhaps it was Senator Hughes, that right now, is it correct, 85 are strong Republican? That's
right. And so there's an increase in Republicans on the House map. And, I think that there's, some of the lessons learned, things that were considered is how aggressive do we want to be on this map, and how forward thinking do we want to be? And I think Senator Hughes kind of mentioned this before. We have a long-term approach to this, where we have districts that are attainable in the future, I believe. That's what we tried to do over in Cameron County and Bexar County. But as far as those districts, Republican districts, we made sure that they are strong and able to withstand the next 10 years. And I believe there's other areas we're going to be able to pick up on. But I believe firmly that we are passing a strong House map for Republicans that we can build on.
And if I can just bolster what Representative Jatan said, he said it well, as he always does. But if I can just give, since I'm an old man, if I can just give an example when we did this and messed this up in the past. So Travis County, obviously that's, Austin is there. There are suburban and historically rural areas of Travis County where Republicans could do well. And so in the 2001 redistricting cycle, I wasn't there, but in the maps they drew in 2001 for the Texas House, 6 Texas House districts in Travis County. Historically, Republicans had held one of those districts consistently, and another one they would win in good years. And so it was kind of a swing district. So Republicans had one pretty safe district in Travis County, believe it or not, for years and years and years, and another district that they could hold consistently. They didn't win it every time, but they could hold it. So that's what it was like going into 2001. But in 2001, the goal was to really maximize Republican, membership. We wanted to elect a new speaker, get a Republican majority in 2002. And so in 2001, they drew the maps in such a way that of those 6 districts in Travis County, we could elect 3 Republicans. That had never happened, and it worked. 2002 was a great election cycle for us, a midterm, an off-year election for the president, but a great year for us anyway. And so we won 3 of those 6 seats. So we went from 1, really 1.5 to 3. Great. But by 3 election cycles in, we had lost all 3 of those. So we had 0 Republican representatives out of 6 in Travis County. We could have had 1 or 2. We'd stretched to get 3. And a few election cycles into the decade, we had 0. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Representative Jatan said it well. We have to be wise about this, right? We want to be We don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. So we want to draw maps that have strong Republican majorities that we can hang on to. Because if we draw them too thin, it's not just that we lose the part we overreached for. We can lose all of our seats in the county. Where we could have held 1 or 2, we can lose. We can try to get 3 or 4 and lose them all. So that's the challenge, and that's why it's frustrating when we can't draw this. You could zig and zag in a way that and draw a really, really ugly map and elect a few more Republicans, but we would not be able to hold those seats for a couple of cycles.
And being being one of the old people too involved, back in 2008, after we had those 2001 districts, we went to 76, 74. I mean, that was a really scary time for all of us.
Yes. And that's right. And that was under the map I'm talking about. They drew that in 01 to maximize Republican strength. And we almost, good point, we were one vote short of losing our majority just 3 election cycles in. That's a great point.
All right. Andrew Eller asks, there are 3 pre-filed amendments for the Senate maps and 8 for the State Board of Education. So Representative Chaton, are you saying that those 3 pre-filed for Senate will not be heard or will be voted down?
So we are going to go through the legislative process. And so they will likely come forward to the floor. We will likely have debate on those. And just based on tradition, I don't think that they will get, I don't believe that they will be approved by the author. And it'll still be if it goes to a vote, it'll still be a vote of the members. And so we'll see how those go. But unless there is something egregious in the map that we need to address, and, if that ends up being identified, then I have no doubt that we'll be able to go and talk to the Senate and be able to work some things out and make sure that we're all in agreement on it. But otherwise, I don't know that those 3 will make it through. That's my perspective of it. And we'll see how today goes. And I could be completely wrong, but this is how it typically goes when it comes to the House working on the Senate maps.
All right. R.K. Brown asks, does the conference committee have to be finished by the end of the special session?
Yes, that's a great question. So, compare us to the U.S. House, U.S. Senate. They're just perpetually in session, right? So nobody gets in a hurry. Nobody really plans on passing the bill. Oh, yeah, we'll get that done tomorrow. We have plenty of time. They go on recess, come back. I'm not fussing at them. We have some great Republicans in the Congress. It's just kind of a broken system. And so there's no sense of urgency. They're not going to pass anything anytime soon. And we'll just start over. We'll just pick it up when we come back. But here in the Texas legislature, in these special sessions, when that 30-day special session ends, we may have a bill up to the very finish line. But if it doesn't get across the finish line, it's dead, and the whole process has to start over in another special session. Now, let me say this. If we are at that point, if we've got a conference committee, we're at the very end, we're in conference committee, we've got a map that everybody likes, and we just don't get it done. If the governor calls us back for another session, it won't take very long, right? Because we've already got it worked out. We agree on the map. But to be clear, everything does have to be done. It's got to be out. It's got to be the final version's got to be passed by the House and the Senate before the end of the special session, or it doesn't make it.
All right. And we have one more person who is concerned. Well, actually, they said, Linda Sewell asks, why are the numbers for the House and Senate districts not the same for the number of people represented? Or for the people represented?
Oh, okay, great question. And so we were talking about communities of interest, right? And not wanting to split communities unless we have to. So it's a balance. And so basically you take the number, you start out with the population of Texas, and you divide it by 150 because there's 150 House seats. And that's where you come up with 194,303. And then you take the population of Texas and divide it by 31 to get the number of people in a Texas Senate seat, 940,178. And so that's what we shoot for. And as we draw those maps, we want to get those districts all about the same size. But you don't want to split a county unless you have to. You don't want to split a community unless you have to. So under the Texas Constitution, we have a little bit of wiggle room. We have basically a 10% deviation. So the difference between the biggest district and the smallest district cannot be more than 10%. And the average has got to be 194,000 in the House, 940 in the Senate. Now, if we wanted to balance them perfectly to a person, like we are required to do for the U.S. House maps, if we wanted to do that, the lines would be a lot uglier. We'd have to split more counties. We'd have to split more communities. And so the compromise position we have come up with over the years says that there can be a 10% difference between the smallest district and the largest district, but that's it. They've all got to be within that range. And so that's the distinction. So that's why you're going to see some a little bigger, some a little smaller, but they've all got to be within that 10% for Texas House and Texas Senate.
Thank you so much, Senator Hughes, and thank you so much, Representative Jeton. I know it's 7:58 and y'all got work you have to get to. So we want to thank y'all so much for giving us the insight, and we really look forward to getting this deal wrapped up. We hope we get it done by next Tuesday so that the primaries can stay on track, but I know it just has to go through the process. The call to action for everybody this week is if you have an opportunity, go to the Texas Tribune website, make a comment, see if you can put some facts in there. And if you know any of the advertisers and you think that they ought to know what kind of information is being posted that's sort of slanted and it's not nonpartisan, that would be great for you guys. And stay involved in the redistricting part. Keep watching. It's all on Texas Legislature online, and you can find it also at Texas Redistricting. You Google that, and you can just click on the redistricting and see what's going on. But thanks to, again, thanks to Senator Hughes and Representative Jeton for all the work. And like Representative Jeton said, y'all been doing a month's worth of work in 1 week. So thank y'all.
We're so thankful for you. Thank you so much for putting these together. Everybody on this call, many of you I've known already, others I've connected with over the last weeks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. It's working. It is working. Keep it up.
Yeah, just reiterating what Senator Hughes says. We appreciate these calls and what all y'all are doing to help out, and your feedback and communication has been really helpful as we've gone through the elections and with redistricting. So thank y'all.
All right, we're going to wrap up the call. Thank y'all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Visa.